Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing? Here I am. I'm a Saskatchewan gal, and I'm going to tell you right now, this weather is over the top and loving it. So today's the day that you might want to play hooky. Oh, did I say that? I'm an employer. No, don't do that. After work, go sit on a deck, though. So I think, do we have any? Are we live?
We're missing Ashley on video at the moment.
Oh, okay. But I can speak to my audience.
Yes.
Here we are, technology issues again, people, but it's good. That's okay. We'll get through this. We have the means to do it. My name is Deb Wiegers. I am the managing principal of the benefits division for Wiegers Financial and Benefits. And as you well all know, our vision at our corporation is we make a difference in people's lives. And today we're going to talk about how that's going to be part of our conversation that we have every day with our clients and the employees and the families of those clients of ours as well. So today's discussion is very, very timely. There's lots of chatter around this. I was at a conference last week for the Canadian Pension and Benefits Institute. And one of the areas that there was a lot of discussion on was well-being in general. And certainly today, when we're talking about financial well-being, it is kind of the talk of the town. Ashley and I were talking. We'll formally introduce Ashley. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, everyone.
We'll introduce Ashley a little bit later formally, but one of the things we talked about is, back in the day, when we were talking benefits, we never brought up this discussion about financial well-being. In fact, we were quite often told not to bring it up because insurance was that thing where people said, no, don't send your people our way. They're just going to sell us something. And how that table has turned and how important this conversation has become today for employers and organizations and the employees and their families. So I'm looking forward to some banter on that for sure with Ashley. A couple of housekeeping items. This session is being taped. So later on, if you're not able to stay for the whole session, you're certainly able to come back in and watch it. It'll be on our website and our Facebook. Definitely, if you've got questions, please send them our way during the format or our discussion. Absolutely do that. If you've got questions after, please do send them to us. We'll get back to you. In fact, I think Phil, and Phil, our IT guy, want to give he's my savior when it comes to the IT stuff. So we almost lost our speaker for about 30 seconds. So I'm just saying. So then I got rattled. And I mean, oh my gosh, what should I say? Am I having a conversation with myself today? So we want to tape it because we want you to go back, see the parts that you may not have listened to because you have to bounce out, share them with other colleagues and organizations that you feel will benefit from the conversation today. We are very excited to be able to have this accredited for certified professional development for HR listeners. So do send us your request, and I will have Phil put my email address on there, just so you have it. It's deb.wiegers@wiegers.ca, and then we can make sure that we get that process rolling for you as well. So the monthly theme this month, how appropriate, do more with wellness. So this is perfect. So at Wiegers Financial, we recognize this. The one thing that we're really speaking a lot about is this overall aspect, the overall holistic approach to a healthier bottom line. So we come at it from many different angles as an organization working with our clients and their families. So today, being financial wellness definitely is one of those pieces that we'll talk about. Well-being, as we know, it's taking center stage. Definitely. We know it impacts organizations on many levels, mentally, emotionally, financially. And we also know that physically, that's a conversation Ashley and I were talking about. That was a big thing back then, Ashley, was just how financial or how physical well-being was kind of the big one, where we talked about gym memberships and how we've grown this conversation over the years. So today our session will be talking about financial well-being and moving from stress to security. So Ashley Kapustiak.
So close, so close. You know what? Everyone gets it wrong. It's Kapustiak.
Yak. It's my tongue. It just doesn't work well with this kind of.
Well, and the funny part is when I married my partner, I kept my name, and it could have been a Laflume, which would have been so much easier for you. But for some reason, carrying my father's legacy of 4 children, and they were all girls, I just thought it would be important to keep my name. So I apologize.
Ooh, I love it. No, thank you for that. So she comes to us from Winnipeg, the land of much snow still. And lots of runoff of water in today's melting that we have. Our snow's gone. I know she was jealous. Ashley joined Canada Life in 2021 and has 15 years of experience in the finance industry, focus on wealth management and financial planning. Her role today is not to be the expert per se as it relates to financial planning, but more in the level of communication and education to the organizations and the employees and families of those organizations, which is the real big gap I feel that we have today. We'll talk a little bit more about why we need to get more into this space. Ashley is responsible for coordinating and conducting educational sessions that are tailored to the plan members' needs. So welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great opportunity, and any opportunity we have to highlight such an important topic that everyone is talking about or putting focus on right now is great. So thank you for having me.
Yes, well, this is great that you can join us because we've got lots to talk about. We'll probably run out of time. Phil, give me the hook. Done. So
Okay.
we'll hand in the time that we have. So I'm going to start it out with this, a survey, because I love stats. You and I, we both love stats. The
Right.
Ipsos survey in April of 2022, 31% of Canadians don't earn enough money to pay their bills and debt payments. And almost half of them surveyed said that they're $200 within insolvency. Now that's alarming. Like, this was what makes us have to think about why we need to talk about this. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we're probably in a much tougher space with respect to people.
I agree. And I was just going to say that, and we'll talk to it further in the presentation, but what we're seeing is previous to the COVID pandemic, we were already struggling, a certain amount of us Canadians, like you had mentioned, about 33%. With COVID, everyone's handling it. We're all doing the best we can. But coming out of COVID is where the concern lies. Interest rates are going to go up. We're at our highest debt levels for Canadians. Home prices are at record levels. So how are we supposed to manage? And that's all Canadians, especially those who are struggling. We call it not having enough money at the end of the month. They can't pay their bills. It's not even about saving for retirement or any of those debt problems. It's just living, keeping a house over their head and feeding their families. So it's something that is so important and will become even more important as we navigate the next couple of years out of the COVID situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we were talking about this yesterday, and we were talking about the minimum wage going up, and people said, oh my gosh, this is going to make it really tough for businesses to stay open. And I said, true point. But if they're thinking of it from that perspective, we have to worry about the cost of living going up. And I think it's going at much more rapid pace. And so this is concerning because for every few dollars that these employees lose makes it that much more stressful, in which they have all the other issues that go along with it. And the mental space, obviously, as we well know, is the most impacted by that. So let's start with the first question.
Okay.
Simple. Let's just define financial well-being.
Which is a challenge in itself. I mean, if any of the participants have actually taken the time to research it, there are so many different definitions out there. It's a rabbit hole of information, which Deb and I were talking about before. But based on research completed by ResearchGate, the definition for financial well-being is the extent to which somebody is able to meet all of their current commitments and needs comfortably and has the financial resilience to maintain this in the future. So it's about an employee having control over their finances, being able to navigate a financial setback, meeting their financial goals, whatever those are uniquely to them, and then having the freedom to make choices that allows them to find the balance in life. There are so many different levels of financial well-being, and those who have a strong level of financial well-being will have less associated stress, greater mental, physical health. So once again, when you start going down this rabbit hole of information, it really expands to a huge undertaking for employers to find the right steps to support their staff through compensation, through their packaging of financial well-being support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was reading an article today, and we were talking about it because they defined it in pillars, 4 pillars when it comes to financial. The number one, which is the one that quite often, and I understand, and because we have a retirement planning division and a financial planning division, but I even said to the team, I said, we can't even start here. We need to start here. It's here. We got to start at the base level. So it starts with budgeting. right? It starts with budgeting. Then we have to talk about protecting our families. Then we have to talk about our financial goals. Then we need to talk about planning for retirement. We miss these fundamental basic steps. And to be talking at this level, we have to understand that if we don't get the framework and the basic steps in place first, we're not going to have, they're not going to have the success that they should have when it comes to this subject line. And another stat, because I love stats, 75% of Canadians, 75% of Canadians are worried that they're not saving enough for retirement. So if we don't get them trained in this step at the onset, at the very beginning, and we're talking beginning, maybe as old as 12 years old, right? I mean, this isn't about an employee in the workplace. This is about our young children of today that don't know how to balance checkbooks. That's right. They don't have checkbooks anymore, right? And they laugh at me and they go, what is that? And I said, you know what that was? That was a tool to say that for $1 over the account that you spent, you didn't have any money and you just didn't get to spend. Period, end of story. There was no draft. There was no mom and dad. There was no none. It says you had no money. So we have to get back to that basic level of conversation. So,
well, and you also have to acknowledge it wasn't taught in schools at that point, right? The fundamentals of balancing a checkbook, a budget, these were not topics that we learned when we were studying math. It is now. There are courses specifically set towards that to really focus in on that younger generation. But you're right, 75% don't know if they have enough. Quite a few, like the positive note is quite a few people are saving for retirement. Is it going to be enough is the question. Do they have enough to support a lifestyle that they want to live in the future? So, first and foremost, when we talk to sponsors about retirement plans, we're really trying to provide that comfort or guarantee or just retirement income focus. But if a member cannot find the resources to save for retirement, then it's fruitless in a sense. And so, like you say, building up the base and having education, and it's not all education, and we'll talk again further in the presentation, like further in our conversation about that later on, but it's really about getting that basic knowledge under their belt so they have control. They have more money at the end of the month that they could find to put into retirement or emergency savings so that those unexpected life events don't provide that setback. But if our goal is to have a great retirement and provide your employees with that great retirement focus, that part of that compensation package, we really have to take a step back to say, how can we enable them to do it? And to be honest, that encompasses how financial well-being will affect the employees that we're talking about today for our sponsors.
Yep, absolutely. And it has to happen because, it's an interesting when we were talking about, and I know Danielle's on in our session. So hi, Danielle. And she's a retirement planning department. We were talking about the matching contributions. And we're saying, like, why wouldn't someone want to take a matching contribution? This is free cash. But the question is, why can't they do it? Well, that's what we're missing. Right.
Well, and you got to put yourself in the members' shoes. So we come in and we do education. We talk about matching and don't leave the money behind and how important it is. Then they go home and they're like, where's the money? How am I even able to put into my savings plan? So that alone is a stressor for employees without us even, with the best of intentions going into it. And this is not all employees, so we should be very careful, but there is a subgroup of employees. So depending on what type of organization you have, you want to pay attention to what that looks like for your employees and really uniquely create something that's going to support them. It's not an answer that would go across the board and fit for every single organization.
No, and I agree, because you know what? It starts with the family. It starts with the parents training the children before they even get into the workplace. That's where it starts, right?
Right. And without aging ourselves, our parents, this was a taboo subject. Even now, I can say having an estate planning conversation with my parents or budgeting, this is not something we talk about. There's no comfort for our parents to have that conversation. That's changed. So I can say for myself, who I'm 44 now, my 18-year-old is well versed in credit cards and debt management and saving and putting half aside. These conversations are part of the day-to-day. I can even embarrass myself saying I happen to do a lot of emotional shopping when I'm hitting the till, and it's my 18-year-old who's like, you're overbuying. That is not in the like she's correcting me because she knows that I will go for that chocolate bar or that $3.99, right? Like I it's that emotional buying that we do. And the 18-year-old is the one that calls me out saying, "You're overbuying, mom."
Guilty, guilty. My
Right?
daughter is watching this, she's gonna go, oh yeah, that's mom.
But the
Anyway,
conversations are comfortable now, and that's this generation. So for those who are coming to retirement, again, that's a different type of support. So when we focus on individual generations, genders, those type of dynamics or variables, the focus changes of what we would want to put in front of them to help and support them.
yeah, exactly. So I think we're gonna go to a poll question. Is there a question that we can throw? I think we should throw this up and let's just see what the audience has to say.
Sure, I will share my slide. So just bear with me a second as I pull that up here.
We're going to talk about the impact to organizations. This is our next question. What is this impact to organizations? Why should we care? Why should employers care to put the time and the resources into this subject line?
Absolutely. So we should be seeing a poll right now that has come up on this screen. So to give you some context on what this looks like, bear with me a second as I'm just getting my screens organized. Money worries are the biggest source of stress for Canadians. There's a lot of research that plays to that, and I won't go through I don't have the actual infographic numbers at the moment, and I think we already talked to them for the most part, but chances are many of your employees are struggling with their finances. So employees with financial stress affects their performance and ability to focus at work, which can lead to lower productivity. So not only does financial stress affect your employees' personal lives, it's affecting their work life because it's not something they can leave at home or at the door when they come in with their coffee.
Yeah. And
So,
you know,
okay, go ahead.
I was going to say one of the stats that was really quite, because I did a poll at my session last week with the pension benefits conference, and I was actually surprised how many people got it wrong. But that means
Really?
I'm so much in the subject that I probably just assumed everybody knew, but we talked about presenteeism versus absenteeism. And absenteeism is already climbing, and that's already a conversation that is a little bit concerning. So on average, 10 absent days per year in your organization. That's how many days an employee misses. So do the math, right? Take an employee's salary times 10 days missed. What's that loss to the bottom line? What's lost to the bottom line as it relates to presenteeism?
Absolutely. So what we're seeing here on the screen is I'd like to ask the participants who joined us to answer this question. For an organization with 200 employees, how much is it going to cost annually for this organization who have employees distracted by financial stress? And we gave you some options: $75,000 a year, $120,000 a year, $200,000 a year, 350,000 per year. You know, some of you may have balked at the 75 already, but the number's there. So what we're going to do, Deb, if you're okay, I'm just going to switch slides. So we do have a slight delay from what we're talking about to what's appearing on Facebook. So if you're a member, please put your answers into the chat area. And in our next slide, we'll get to those results, but it'll give you time to answer. And we hope everyone puts a guess in there. We'd like to see what everyone's thinking. So when we come to the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada actually broke down the cost of employee financial stress on production, referencing research completed by the Canadian Payroll Association, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and Statistics Canada. So this isn't a number we just put together for you. 43% of 200 employees, which is 86 employees, say their stress related to personal finance impacts their workplace performance. Of those 86 employees, 40 employees say that they spend 3.5 hours a week on financial issues, with the remaining employees spending about half an hour a week on financial issues. So just a quick reminder, if you haven't put your guess in, please do so in the chat, because we're about to go through what those numbers actually look like for you. So with 40 employees spending 3.5 hours and 46 employees spending half an hour on financial issues, that equates to 163.5 hours lost to financial stress each week. When we take that 163 hours lost to financial stress and multiply it by a 46 work week, we are looking at 7,521 hours lost to financial stress. Okay, and this is answer time. So if you haven't put your answer in, sorry, folks. So 7,521 hours, with an average wage of 27.66 for Canadians, we're looking at $208,000 of lost production. That is a huge number. Did any respondents put a participation in? What are we seeing in the numbers, Deb?
You know what? Interestingly enough, they said C 200. That's the majority.
Which is fabulous. You're aware the bottom line effects of
Wow.
having someone with financial stress, that one piece, not the absenteeism that you talked about, just financial stress alone is creating this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because when we talk about that and we talk about that presenteeism and when we don't think about and drill these things down to the actual number, because unfortunately businesses, we're beasts of understanding the data. And the data says, is it good, bad, or indifferent? So this is an alarming number. When we talk about the stress that creates this presenteeism is 10 times absenteeism. This is a number we cannot dismiss. We cannot ignore this number. I understand it's not all the financial space, but because today's space is more about this conversation, it's definitely a great majority. So interesting.
Absolutely.
Something to think about, Ashley.
Well, and something that the participants can use as a benchmark, and this was from the website that I used to get this information, is if you have a smaller or larger organization, basically put $1,000 per employee on an annual basis as your benchmark. So you can quickly see, depending on what size your organization is, the impact it's having for you. You could do a lot more work to find that information, but if you wanted just to get an idea of how it's impacting you, $1,000 per employee per year.
Yeah, good point. So what are businesses doing to help?
They're doing quite a bit. And we have, as we both mentioned, we love stats. So I'm going to share another screen here. Bear with me as I pull it up for you. There we go. So employers are seeing the need and are working and creating programs or updating their current supports for their employees. And we're seeing 79% saying it's important to provide greater financial wellness assistance to employees over the next 2 years. As I mentioned, coming out of the pandemic, there's a lot more supports that are going to be required to ensure that your staff is supported and mentally and physically, financially safe and healthy. Of 74% aim to provide dedicated resources to areas outside of health benefits in the next 3 years, including financial well-being. The number that I actually like on this is the 6% annual growth of financial wellness services being provided and adopted by organizations. Of course, we want to see a higher number since 2012, but it's still going in the right direction. And I believe in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see that number just massively increased by leaps and bounds.
I agree. And I know that we're having this conversation a lot with our clients. And, it's not just enough to put in a group retirement program. They're now asking those questions. What are we going to do with this information? How are you going to help my employees? And there's like so many different variables that are involved. And so we've got to maybe dissect this and understand that not everybody's going to learn in the same capacity. How are we going to get that message out so that it has some meaning, right? So if we talk about the considerations, what are the considerations organizations what do they need to do to consider in order to help employees and their families? Like, what are they gonna have to be thinking about?
To be honest, again, I will go back to what I said earlier. It's a unique situation per organization. So depending on what kind of business you're running, you will have different talent within your organization. So you really need to get to the staff and hear from them what's troubling them, what are their main concerns. And this, if you're in a smaller organization, this could be done through one-on-one conversations or focus groups. Larger organizations, you may want to implement some type of an employee survey to find out those type of supports that could be required. We're very open time right now. A lot of Canadians have spent the last 2 years really reflecting on what's important to us. Is it about getting that next career? And you're going to find a lot more employees are really focused about finding that balance between personal life and their work life. And the financial piece comes right in. So it might surprise you when you survey or speak to your staff, what is actually their focus. So first and foremost is get in contact with your staff and get to that level of what is ailing them, what is causing them to have sleepless nights, what is causing them to not focus at work and bring things in, whether it's, we've attested to financial issues because those are the biggest numbers that we're seeing from the stats that are coming out in the research, but it could be others, right? And, I would even say recently I was part of an education session where English wasn't a primary language. So the focus necessarily, I mean, they needed to understand retirement, but it was more about getting the information to them that they could interpret, dissect themselves and support. So there's a lot of nuances when it comes to this. And it could be gender, it could be ethnicity, it could be the economic factors. There's quite a few things that we would want to look at when we're looking at revamping the wellness program that you have or creating something new to help.
Yeah, exactly. And surveys, it's interesting because as a lot of things have changed over the years, you didn't, for lack of better words, care what the employees thought. This is what we were doing, move forward, get to work, don't worry about it, leave your stuff at the door, work, go home, start all over again, right? Well, today, we need to hear from the people. We need to hear what they're really thinking. And I know that we're often asked about the survey side. And what we offer our clients is we break down the modules. I call them modules because it's not just about benefits. It's not just about, do you like coming to work? There's leadership. There's how well do you work within, your community or your colleagues, and there's, do you believe, that there's a culture there that you would want to maintain, or what are the things that they would like to see change? And you have to hear the message. You have to hear it, because if we pull up, we got to have a blind eye to these things and we don't recognize that these are the areas that are going to, again, the big picture is it's going to impact the bottom line. Right. So what do we do to make things healthy on every level, from the business perspective, from the employee's perspective? And so to get that feedback and to have it meaningful and then to act on it. So obviously the trick is to make sure that those questions aren't so defined that you're being asked to meet an expectation, but rather you're gathering information to better understand what's happening so that you can pivot and change, especially in today's world when we're dealing with these labor realities. This is a very real conversation. Right. And they're asking the question. I know quite often from my clients, they're telling me employees are interviewing them. Right. So it's not the tables have turned. So if they're interviewing you, what are those things they're asking for? We need to be mindful of that. And we need to turn that into that interview so that they're embracing the ability to buy into working with that organization.
Well, and you had in January, for those who joined, you had a speaker talking to the talent shortage and what we're looking at as employers on retaining great talent and finding new talent. And we're finding in the research that's being done is having a strong financial wellness program is a tipping point, is something that an employee would consider as part of their hiring selection process. If an organization provides the same amount of compensation and benefits, but they have a financial wellness program, guess what? They're going to go to that organization. And I think that's a very important thing to bring up at this time too. There was a lot of great things that your speaker had talked to about it. And it really made even myself pause to say, how does that affect Canadians? Which is always that ground question I come back to. And I can say, as Deb mentioned, in August of last year, I made a role change to find a better balance with a corporation that's part of it. There was nothing wrong with who I worked for, what I was doing before, but my focus had changed myself. I was looking for more of a balance, and the company I'm working for now provides that for me. That was my tipping point. So it's real. People are making decisions like that. I've made that decision myself.
No, and I agree, Ashley. And I mean, we deal with that every day. I mean, we work with a team of 48 and we're building and we're growing and we're really excited and happy, but there's challenges in finding that talent and getting that pairing. So it always keeps us mindful of the things that we need to be thinking about. And one of the stats came from another speaker last week. They talked about the average stay of an employee. And as an employer, it's concerning because, as we well know, it takes a lot of money to invest in people and train them, and then get to a point where now it works well for everybody. But they said the average stay is 2.8 years. So we have to ask ourselves why. Because it's not, I believe, and this is a personal, I'm not prepared to say this is what it is, therefore deal with it. I believe we can change that. And by looking at developing a culture that cares, and looking at these different elements and pulling it into the conversation and delivering on it, that's what's going to create, I believe, the loyalty and the retention for the long term, along with other things, of course.
I was
But
going to say an evolution. And so right today we can say, this is what's topical. This is what's mattering to people who are looking for jobs. Is that what's going to be there in 5 years? No, maybe not. We don't know. We know what's happened in the past, but we don't know what the future. So being versatile as an organization and doing those system checks with your staff. But I also think it's about the organization itself. If you're a large organization, this might be easier to accomplish. You have a little bit more funding and resources with your human resource department to implement. Smaller organizations are going to have a little bit more of a challenge in incorporating financial wellness, but it's still possible. So when I talk to you about really looking at the employee's situation uniquely in that organization, it's also looking at the organization itself. What capabilities, what resources do you have internally? What free resources are out there that you can acclimate into or bring into your wellness program to provide to your support your employees and yourselves. So it's really a two-step process, I think.
yeah, and there's a lot of things in the tickle trunk. So we need to look in the tickle trunk. And so when I say that, I say, you know what, most of our clients, obviously our clients have a benefits program. Look within the benefits program, look to the suppliers, because those suppliers have those tools in there. They are bringing in mental health apps. They are bringing financial tools in which that people can analyze their own specific situation. You look at the employee assistance programs out there. They have financial resources. They have a health risk assessment that helps you identify where people are thinking. And so those tools are there. So quite often what we do is as a consultant is that we'll dig those tools out and then we bring them to the forefront, whether it's with an existing client or presenting. We'll tell them, these are the things that come to you via these relationships that you have. So it's not like you have to go out, hire somebody, research this stuff, pay for these things, bring them in and continue to train them. The tools are right there. Probably what we need is someone to take lead on that, right, within the organization. No different than we need someone to take lead on that wellness conversation. I call them the wellness cheerleader, right? Someone who's really always excited about that conversation. They're going to be your best cheerleader. If someone understands this conversation, they're going to dig in the tickle trunk. They're going to find those things. And I know for us as a company, we put out every Friday, we call it a Friday. And what we do is we share all sorts of things. We share, great news about what people have done for accomplishments. What we celebrate different anniversaries and people passing exams, but we also get into the wellness conversation. And we also remind our employees, what are the tools in the tickle trunk that we have that you've probably forgotten about? And we bring those to the forefront. And we bring those things to the forefront when we're out hiring and looking for people so that they recognize that we already have that there. So it's there for you. And we'll continue to really try and train our clients to understand that it's something that you just need to continually message. That's what you need to do.
Well,
right?
and I think also having the understanding of what that employee needs. So when you talked about tickle trunk, depending on who your plan administrator is, they're going to have a lot of resources that they can provide to alleviate the burden that would fall onto the organization itself. It's almost piggybacking off of it. It's part of working with a plan administrator, but there's also free resources out there, and just simply know steer an employee. So the Credit Counseling Society is a good one for folks who are having issues with debt. Not all of their programs have a cost attached to it. There's a lot of free information. There's another website, nomoredebt.org, which provides staff or employees or Canadians budgeting tools, understanding net worth. There's education webinars. These are free resources. So as an organization who maybe doesn't have that lack of funding or has lack of funding, these are things that you can promote within your organization to get those supports. I mean, there's so many different levels that can be brought in, but that toolbox or that tickle trunk, you just need that person to promote it. And I think that's the key in an organization, is ensuring that someone's on top of it. As I mentioned, it's an evolving situation. So what we're focusing on today for Canadians may not be what's topical 3 to 4 years. So that person in the organization is staying on top of it and adjusting where need be to continue providing support where needed for employees overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe what we can do is when we're finished, we'll get those websites or those
Of course.
out to, and we'll put them on our message back out to our people, and then that they
Absolutely.
listeners.
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. I can put together a few links that I think would be a value that we can share with you, Deb, and provide to the participants if there's interest. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So when we talk about all this stuff, we talk about these tools and the tickle trunk and all these things, I think the biggest thing that we have to deal with is how do we now deliver this message? Because I mean, technology is a big part of our space. And we talked about this yesterday, and they're a very rapidly growing company with, as most companies have, varying ages, demographics within their space. And they were talking so simple as, I wish we had paperwork still, because life was easy with paperwork. And I went, really, was it? Right. But they're saying, but we could at least get that job done. We could take that paperwork to that employee, because the challenge now is the technology's there. It's efficient. It's great, but it needs to be trained. And there's a lot of reasons why it's going to be difficult in some spaces to train or not train. It could be language barriers. It could be age, right? Desire and ability to be able to tap into that technology. But I think we still need to look at some of these ways in which we deliver this information, technology be one of them. So give us some ideas in terms of just some other ways in which we can be better at communicating and delivering those messages.
I really think it comes down to engagement. How do we get members? It's great that you create this wellness program that's going to support them based on all this information we're sharing with you today, but to engage a member into looking at the information, utilizing the information is a totally different conversation. Like you said, Deb, there are factors. What if they're in remote locations and don't have internet access or personal computers at home? What if English is not, or French are not their first languages? How do you provide information to someone, and it was really explained to me well recently, where if you can imagine English and French not being your first language, as someone who speaks English and French as your first language, imagine getting documentation or information in Italian. Here you go. Good luck. This is going to help you. That there's a disconnect. So again, focusing on the uniqueness of your employees is going to be important. But when it comes to technology, you're really thinking out of the box. So pre-COVID, as a communication education, we really wanted to be in front of members. We wanted to see that participation so we can get the engagement, right? So when we're doing an education session, you can clearly see if a concept is coming or if you need to go further details and adjust to that. But in the virtual world, many of you will attest, you're looking at blank screens a lot of the time. You don't even know if a joke you're telling is funny, right? To you, you think it's funny and you're laughing to yourself. But when it comes to actually providing the information and getting engagement, there's a lot of different ways that you have to think about and find the solutions for. So whether it's in some cases, for example, if it's a remote location that doesn't have internet, so they're not able to look at pre-recorded videos potentially, or access emails with links, it might be a train your trainer situation where a manager may have to become a little bit more abreast of these things so that when an employee is having an issue, there's some support provided to them. So it really depends on the situation, and it's about looking at the opportunities to do better.
Yeah.
And that was just one example, but language barriers is an issue, remote locations is an issue, and then overall engagement. And what I have found, and this is my own personal, is when the organization is engaged with you, then it's easier to get the engagement of the employees. So as a communication and education manager, if I have the engagement with the group that I'm working with, whether it's human resources or the plan sponsor, whomever, if they're providing the reminders and getting that communication out, the participation level increases astronomically. So it really is having somebody to promote it within the organization is key in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all learn in different ways. I know I'm a visual. I mean, if you put a tutorial on there, I'm listening. My brain is, I'm engaged. If you give me a manual, not so good, right? And so we have to remember that. So we try our best to switch it up, in terms of just how we take our messaging out. And I know that now, even with employee benefits, just in general, it's not enough just to have the booklet. They want to see a taped version of this, right? I mean, in person is great. COVID obviously was the barrier. I did my first presentation in person 2 days ago, and it was like, wow, this was amazing. It was nice to be back, actually, but if we can't be doing that because of remote, we tape these sessions and we put them out there. You'll have backup on both levels. The barrier is the language. That's a tricky one for us because unfortunately, when you live in the remote location we do in Saskatchewan, I have that much French in me. Je m'appelle Debbie.
no, but that's where that creativity needs to come into play from the organization, working with, folks like yourself or the plan administrators, whomever that be. It's a thinking tank, I think, is the way I would like to approach it, and looking at the available resources to circumvent the language barrier, to get that information out to them. Like you said, a lot of times through COVID, we've really started using pre-recorded videos of information that can be utilized in remote areas and played at team meetings once a month, what have you. And what I would also say is the focus of topics have changed. So previous, we would talk about getting the most out of your plan. Here's how you choose investments. Now it's budgeting, it's debt management. And we're talking about the base material to say, lines of credit, where they work, where they don't work. And bad debt happens to really good people. And that is empowering in itself when you can provide that information to allow a member to just pause a moment and do one thing differently in their lives to start. And as an educator, it's something that I've always felt really passionate about. I'm lucky in my role because I get to engage with members all the time. This is where my focus is. So it's something I feel strongly about. And I think it's time that we really focus and refocus on what's really going to matter to them today to help them through this.
I wrote it down. I love that line. Bad debt happens to really good people. I love that line because it's true. I don't think a lot of people actually even realize they're in a situation until one bump in the road hits. One bump, right?
Well, and no one taught them, right?
It's like, damn, I should have done better.
No one taught them, and they're full up with how much they can take on, right? If you're, just think of a family, a 2-person, 2 children family. There's sporting activities, school events, there's your work that you're trying to balance, there's grocery, like it's just so much. And then you were asking somebody to say, okay, learn about how to manage your debt. It's overwhelming. So find a way to simplify it. Like I said, if you present something in a level that makes sense to your audience, which would be your employees, find one thing. They just need to take one thing away to better themselves. It will build over time. It just needs to start.
Yeah, no, and we talk about, keeping it simple and getting rid of the jargon and the big words. And I mean, I always kind of give the legal space a hard time because they're like, how would you want, I can't understand what you're saying. Can you explain this in English? As they're like laying down documents in front of you, like, I don't even know what that says. I'm sure you do, but I don't. We need to do this in the financial space. We need to keep it simple. And I don't know if this is the right age, but someone had mentioned, I think I was talking about, in fact, I think she was at the University of Regina and she presented for a conference. And she said, you need to speak at a grade 5 level.
That's where exactly it. It's grade 4 to 6 is where we really try to target, because you're just think on, when you're running a team, your slowest person is the level of your team. So you really want to speak to the crowd, but you have to acknowledge the level at which they can interpret that information. So grade 4 to 6 is really what we try to communicate in. A good example is I was at an education session and the plan's transferring and transitioning, and we're using all these big words. And really what mattered was, think of moving addresses. You're moving your house. So all your contents are moving over. You're going to get a new plan number. And I didn't say that. It's your new address. Then you're going to get a new phone number, right? It's how you explain it that allows that engagement from the member so that they leave going, I fully got that, as opposed to me transitioning, transfer, new certificate. It's too much.
Yeah. And what's your investment worth and, valued at in Q2 and Q4? What do these words mean to them? They don't understand. They don't even actually care. Actually, they want to care. They care about, am I doing okay? What do I need to be doing and thinking about differently? We have to speak to that level. And so a lot of work to be done in that space, but I think we're getting there. I know that our team on all levels, we really, really work hard to keep it simplistic, right? And it was reading an article and it's kind of, I like how they've mapped it. It's the path to financial wellness, all these steps that need to happen to get to where we want to be. We can't get from here to here. We need to start here. And all these things that we're talking about become part of how well we get down that path and how well we engage that audience, right? So I think I think this is where we can put the slide up, because I wanted to, as the employer, they're going to ask themselves, why should and I know there's a lot of reasons why they know we should be doing this, but what would really impact them? Why would I want to actually go down this path? What's in it for me? That is right or wrong, what's in it for me? And in today's labor shortage or labor realities, and the loyalty and retention of employees, and the health of the employees. This stat I found quite interesting, because it was out of another insurers, and it was this one here. Where was it? Did you get it? Is it on there? Oh,
Yeah, I think it's on the screen. I think Phil put it up for us.
I'm looking at Obsessed. I'm going, are we like marketing my cabaret right now?
You know what I like about this slide, Deb, though, is generally you look at a slide like this and you really focus on the positives, which is a great the impact of a financial wellness program and the impact it's having. And this was employees who were surveyed who had a wellness program. But what I actually like to do is look at the non-participating. So if you looked at reducing financial stress, only 20% have said it did not matter. So it's 20% that it didn't affect. Alternatively, 80% it reduced their financial stress. So I like looking at the negatives because it really focuses on the positives. So you have 24% of employees who would not likely recommend or to somebody to consider working. Only 24. Like these are good numbers to look at on how progressive the wellness program is going to impact your organization. And it can go more likely to stay at a current job. Again, we talked about it being difficult to acquire talent. We talked about how difficult it is to retain talent. And here we're seeing great numbers. 76% are more likely to stay at their current job who has a financial wellness program built in. So like I say, I like to look at those bad numbers because it really highlights how impactful it can be for an organization who takes the time. And one of the things that you and I both talked about, Deb, is this is not a cost to the production. We talked about what the cost to the organization is. It's not doing something. This is an investment to your organization, not just your bottom line, but to the support of your employees. It's that balance overall. And I think it's a great slide that you put up, Deb. I think it talks to quite a bit of how important this is for organizations to implement.
Well, and I love when I'm talking to my clients and prospective organizations is that when we're talking, because very much we get into this HR conversation because it's all in the same. We're all trying to make a positive difference with the people, right? And when I'm thinking of one in particular, because we hear this a lot, and we work very closely with a preferred partner, Hanif from Express Employment, and he's in the employment space, right? Finding people is very difficult for him to find people for these companies that are growing exponentially, 10, 20, 40, 60 employees, because they're in spaces where their business is booming. They just can't find the people. So when I look at the one stat, when you go, if you have the people that really enjoy and they value what you've done for them, they're going to recommend that business to other people. What a huge asset that is, right? And we know that that's a much stronger opportunity that comes to you, right? Because if John says, I talked to Betty and she said, this is a great place to work, bang, you're already halfway through the process of engagement, right?
Yeah, that referral matters.
Yep, absolutely. So I think we should wrap up. So if we were going to wrap up, I know we talked a lot about a lot of different things, kind of pull it together and tell us what are the things that we want to be thinking about, the takeaways that we want our viewers to have.
From my perspective, the takeaway is we have an opportunity today based on what we're seeing in research, based on what Canadians are worrying about. We have an opportunity that organizations can implement a program that supports financial well-being to really overall acquire new talent, have better attention, less absences, more physical health, greater morale at work. It's really hard for me to find reasons why this doesn't make sense for organizations now. So if you are participating or you are, talking to each other, the idea is if you have a financial wellness program already built in, make sure that you're regularly reviewing it to stay on top of what's mattering to your employees. Do a system check with them. If you are not someone who has a program built in, great opportunity for you to do so now. It doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg. There are plenty of resources, as you mentioned, plan administrators, financial institutions, non-for-profit organizations that I mentioned earlier. There's a ton of resources that doesn't have to create a cost to the organization. And when there is a cost, I really want to encourage to think about it being an investment to your organization versus a cost overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if we can look at some of the factors that go into not having a well employee, and the financial is one of those stressors on the well-being side, there's always going to be a win in that. So I agree with you 100%, because I know I get clients that will come to me and I'll say they're starting to understand the correlation and the importance of taking it back to that basic level, because what gets this conversation going? Well, I had employee, John come into the office and he's asking for an advance on his paycheck because he
Right.
just hasn't put it together. So that's it. That's already and if it's a 15-year employee, you have to be thinking, you want to help him, you need him at work, but you're not really solving his problems by feeding that. You need to help train him to change those behaviors, right?
It's an opportunity. I look at it, it's not a negative. Like I said earlier, bad things happen to good people. There's a lot of things that happen in our lives, those unexpected events that put us into a position like that are unplanned for. But as an organization, you can see that as an organization to support them, get them back on track, build up their base. And yeah, I just see such good things coming from this. I really hope that anyone who's joining, there was something that we said that allows you to talk to Deb further to get more resources. Like I said, I will share that with her, but just need that one buy-in or that one thing that you're going to do differently for your employees based on what we're talking about today. And it's a win overall.
Absolutely. And I don't know, I know that we've shared a lot of information, and to be honest, Ashley, I mean, we're definitely open to questions, but I think we addressed a lot of things in this conversation. So there's definitely some good takeaways. I think for me, when we're talking to our team and how we communicate to our clients, we definitely want to make this so that it's not the unreachable. You can do it and you can set it up in a space that it's easy to manage. It's not going to cost a lot of resources. It can be very simplistic and in nature. And that the tools are there right in your own backyard to do it. I mean, as parents, I know that, I think of the days when we were, I'm dating myself, but when we were kids, we got the family allowance. And so you had $21.30. And that was the end of that. And when you spent, there was no money left. So you actually learned, but even though we didn't have a conversation at the table, it was kind of like the tough realities, right?
Yeah.
Cash is gone. So you learn to spend wisely. If you wanted to blow it all in one night, so be it. You didn't have no money left for the rest of the month, right? When all your friends were going to the movie, right? You were at home. And so those are the things that we have to be thinking about, is that it's not unreachable. We can do this. Is very, very important. There is going to be real value, and it's going to be one of the items at the table, whether you like it or not. I really do believe that. If you don't move into this space, I think it's going to put you in an uncompetitive position as an employer, as an organization, because the millennials of today, they're changing lots of things, right? They're changing how we approach diversity, equity, inclusion. They're changing how we look at the environment and our social surroundings. They're also saying, I want to work for a company that cares. And if you can help me in that well-being space, emotionally, physically, and financially, there's where I want to build my home, right? So thank you so much, Ashley. I think we're good. We've covered off a lot of stuff. No questions. I think we did a good job. So thank you, audience, for joining in. Again, this is a taped session, and we encourage you to send it to others that will see interest in it. I know I always send it to my clients that aren't able to attend, because it's really good takeaways. And then I downsize it in bite-sized form for them as well. In terms of what we're doing going forward, we will be bringing in another conversation on the well-being, as we talked about those spaces, physically, mentally, socially, and financially. So we will have a next presentation on a well-being space. And I also want to send out to the audience and to my clients, because so happy to have been out in space where we're around and surrounded by people. Even being at the conference last week, it was very refreshing. It was 140 people. When's the last time we saw and we're around that many people, right? So we will be thinking about doing our fall seminar in person. So quite excited for that. So we'll be sending out a survey to you to say, would you be comfortable? We want to make sure that you're ready before we go forward and do that. So again, thank you so much, Ashley, for joining us. It was a treat. I know that we'll stay in touch, because there's lots that I can learn from you, and lots that I can share with my clients, my my colleagues and my kids, actually.
I'm so happy to have been here. I feel like we could have 5 of these and still not cover. We really just hit the tip of the iceberg, but I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to promote such a great topical topic that's going to benefit organizations. So thank you for having me.
Now that you said that, you might be part of my panel when I put my wellness panel together.
I agree. I'm easy. This was fun. Thank you for having me again.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, audience.